Look, let's be honest, there's not a lot of PTs out there making $1 million. But let's maybe have a think about why. Maybe you want to earn $1 million, maybe you want to earn $100,000. The secret to success starts with something really goddamn simple that everyone fucks up. Setting good quality goals. If you hear the term goal setting and you think, I've done this before, goal setting doesn't work for me, let's be real about it, revisit it. Why hasn't it worked? Because it works for some people. Why hasn't it worked for you up till now? Maybe it was just in the execution. If you feel excited about good goal setting, that's awesome. It's a really exciting area to focus on, and I'm a big goal setting nerd, so I totally relate. So does goal setting actually work? Short answer, yeah, of course it does. So Harvard study, they found that 83% of the population does not have goals. Clear, defined, laid out goals don't exist. 14% have a plan in mind, but they're unwritten. They're just sort of like off the cuff. Yeah, I'm going to do this, but it's not really written down anywhere. And only 3% have written their goals down. And just a fun fact before we move on, the 3% in Australia control 97% of the wealth of the entire country. Something just to keep in mind. Not surprisingly, they also found that the 14%, those ones that had a plan in mind, were 10 times more successful than the 83%. The 3%, the people who actually written their goals down, were 3 times more successful even than that. So they were 30 times more successful than the 83% who had no goals. To be one of the 3%, first thing you have to do is spend an hour in front of a screen or with a piece of paper. This is time to devote to yourself, to your business, and you never have to share your goals with anyone and you don't want to, but they need to be out of here, on paper, made real. So let's just take that formula from above. I know you're still sitting there like, fuck off, like goal setting bullshit, whatever. That's fine. Let's multiply the above numbers in percentages and just look at the lifespan of a general personal trainer in Australia at the moment. The average lifespan is about 6 months. Multiply that by 10. You get 60 months, which is 5 years. Funnily enough, that's usually the lip that we see people get to when they're quite successful. So if they do pretty good for 5 years and then it's sort of like family, kids, the business model isn't quite set up, they're trading money for time. This is a little bit hard when I have a lifestyle that's working all the time when I want to be home with my family, or they haven't managed money very well, so they can't get a loan for their mortgage. All of those sort of things start to pop up around that 5-year mark, and out people go because they just had an idea in their head. They didn't actually execute it, write it down. Multiply that number for the top 3% by 30. It's 180 months or 15 years. Again, this holds true in our experience and seeing trainers in the gym. When you start looking around at like the top of the top and the guys that are killing it in the industry, most of them have been at this shit for around 15 years. They're the OGs that we talk about, the before Instagram and before Facebook. So if you're wondering if your personal training career can actually last, can you actually make a long-term career out of this? You can already see that actually having written down goals is a really easy step towards that. So let's take this a step further, right? Let's start talking money. Maybe you don't even want to make $1 million. Maybe you want to make 200 or 100 grand. The average personal trainer on the lower end makes 35 grand a year in Australia, below minimum wage. That's our baseline. So if you don't have any written down goals, not executing anything, good chance you're going to probably fall into that mark somewhere. Start thinking about a plan, start making a decision about where we want to go, and simply just thinking about it day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out. This is what I'm doing. That's 10x, right? That takes us into that 14%. 10x of 35K is 350 grand per year. Yeah, well, like I can make 2 grand a week on the gym floor pretty easy, maybe even 3 or 4. If I was able to bring in some other, maybe a team or some other products, some other income coming through, yeah, maybe I can make that 350. That seems reasonable. Now we go to that next step in the 3%. Clear, defined, written down goals, revisited frequently. In theory, 3 times more money. 1.05 million per year. Now, I get it. I'll never turn over that much money. I don't even want to make that much money. Big boy, big girl pants on. Let's think about this realistically. It's possible. If you write all this stuff down and you want to go get it and it's sitting in your mind like, I would really fucking like to do that, I don't know how. Start with what? Start with what your goals are. 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. Write that shit down. Get it out on paper. Review it every week. Stay on top of that shit. Let me ask you this. How would you feel about making $200,000 a year, having a team in place that made it for you? You like personal training? Sweet, do some. You just had a baby? Don't worry about it. The business is still running. Write that in your goals. Work towards that. Take the growth and ownership mindset from our earlier videos. Take the values. Apply these things to how you want it to work. Maybe it's not monetary reward. Maybe it's time. Same rules apply here. So we're going to give you a case study that, to be honest, I started with these numbers off the government website with the Harvard study first. Then I went and looked at personal training performances. And I was like, oh, that actually kind of correlates pretty well. And then I took one of our students who had been working out with us for a little while. So he'd been a coach for 6 months when he worked with us. He started learning like how to grow his business, recognize where he was going wrong, got rid of like the fixed mindset and allowed himself into that kind of growth ownership mindset, rearranged his values and started focusing on what he was really trying to achieve, started chipping away at it. He always had a little bit of trouble though of telling us his 3 and 5 year plan. Was always a little bit, just not quite sure what that looks like yet. So once he had though that short-term goal, he at least had the rest sort of in his head. He just wasn't able to articulate it yet. He all of a sudden started acquiring clients. Yes, he learnt the skills, but it was the mindset that allowed him to learn the skills. All of a sudden, Dylan had a full book. Dylan was overflowing. Now he's got 2 coaches working for him. So when this was written, his current turnover was around 130 grand. His new trainers have just come on. As they get to capacity, they're probably going to produce, let's say, 80% of what Dylan's able to turn over. Because Dylan's a killer and he owns the business, he's a little bit more invested maybe. 80% of what he can do, $104,000 each, is another $208K. Adding online sessions to his service is something that he's been working towards, another $1,000 a week, another $50K. This would result in a turnover, 388 grand per year. Now, I promise you, when I wrote this, I didn't sit down and start at the 388 and reverse engineer it to give you the numbers as they play out. So Dylan's now has continuously overlooked revisiting his goals. As his business changes, so have his goals, and on a personal level. Possibilities are there when you have the intent from a long-term plan. Don't count out setting goals as a way to achieve as much or more than anyone around you. Why would you want to achieve what everyone else is in the personal training industry when it's 35 grand a year? You still going to be here in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, doing what you love, living in alignment with your values that we talked about in the last video? Or are you just another number floated out the side, no longer a personal trainer? You get to decide which end of that scale you're on. You're going to be in the 83% who blows it off, goal setting doesn't work. Maybe 14%, you have a little bit of vision and you're pretty focused on what you want to achieve. Or get real about it. 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 3 years, 5 years. If you do it in under an hour, you didn't do it properly. Write it all down, get it on paper. It will change how your business runs over time. Reflect back to it every single week. Reset them every 12 weeks. Promise it'll make a huge difference to your outcomes. Don't forget, check out in particular on this topic, episode 122 of the STCfit Learning Podcast. Give you a ton more detail about how important mindset and goal setting actually is around being successful and becoming a standout personal trainer, lasting the test of time.